What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. So many Pokemon out there are amazing and everybody loves them, while some of them are nearly universally despised. But honestly, the vast majority of Pokemon are just kind of there. People might remember them, but they just don't think anything about them and move on, largely ignoring them. But every Pokemon is somebody's favorite, and there are reasons to appreciate all of them, like Clauncher. This Pokemon is no doubt appreciated by some people out there somewhere, but it was also another in a long line of crustacean Pokemon, and not even the first pure water type in that group. So I'm sure that many people looked at the more exciting Gen 6 options, but it's actually pretty genius. The way they set it apart is with the big claw on the right, which is able to shoot out high-pressured water, because it's based on the pistol shrimp, and its category is even the water gun Pokemon, which is just so funny. It's even said to be able to shoot flying targets out of the sky, or if close enough, shatter rock, in its base stage. And the name is great, combining together its claw with Launcher, which is its most prominent feature, and that pairs beautifully with the signature ability Mega Launcher as well. Even though it didn't actually get a Mega, but that's fine, it did get an evolution in Clawitzer, who turned that arm into a cannon. But it is still pure water, so I can see why people overlook it, but the unique ability that it's guaranteed to have, and even the blue coloring shows why these Pokemon deserve to exist apart from the other shellfish Pokemon out there. If nothing else, they are said to be delicious, so you can appreciate them for that. Another whole category of Pokemon that go unappreciated would be the middle evolutions, because either end usually gets more of the publicity. The middle is never as cute nor as powerful as the end, so since they are never your final destination, they tend to get overlooked. But one that I want to highlight is Boldore. Odds are that you've used one of these sometime in a Unova game, but have you ever really focused on it? Because just starting on the name, Boldore is so multi-layered. Obviously it sounds like boulder because it's a rock type, but it's also spelled like bold ore, which is another geological term, while also signifying its confident attitude, which is pretty true because they attack you quite a bit. But even the design is impressive because you look at a Roggenrola and a Gigalith and you wonder how in the world they connect. But Boldore does this expertly by beginning to flatten out the rounded shape, making it more triangular, and it arbitrarily grows a rock over top of the ear hole to make it look like it has eyes. And the crystals forming out of it are dull now before they intensely sharpen upon evolution. But maybe my favorite thing about it is that Boldore is the only Pokemon that I can think of that has 3 legs. It's just so cool to have that slightly alien look to make it just a bit more out there. Or maybe they just thought, well, Roggenrola has 2 feet and Gigalith has 4, so we gotta give him 3 somehow? But they actually made it work. So this unassuming Gen 5 Pokemon might not be the most exciting, but just because it's meant to be skipped over doesn't mean that he can't put in some effort. Now, if there were a list of Pokemon that I initially wanted to try but never got around to using, I would have to say Falinks is near the top. When I first saw this thing, I was very much intrigued by what it was all about, but it didn't show up until so late in Galar that I already had a full team assembled. However, I could immediately tell what they were going for here. Playing off of the word Phalanx, which is a type military formation, and Link, which clearly makes them all the same organism somehow. Don't worry about it, it probably makes sense, I guess. So the name is perfect for a group of tiny warriors with their little shields. It's honestly kind of cute. And this ties in perfectly with their signature move of No Retreat that boosts all of their stats but locks them into battle. Since in a Phalanx formation you can't turn your back on the enemy, gotta keep those shields up front, and even if their shields do look kind of puny, I'm sure that Phalanx have the fighting spirit enough to beat you and me easily in combat. After seeing the same Pokemon over and over, it can be easy to become desensitized to their more admirable qualities, especially the Gen 1 crowd that we've seen more often than most of our extended family members. So things can fall by the wayside, like how Arbok really is a decent Pokemon, and yes, I do mean in name and design. The just a snake argument could totally work for Ekans, even though it at least looks like it has a rattle on the end of its tail. And yes, its name is just snake backwards, but Arbok took this idea and expanded upon it by using a specific kind of snake, not just the same Pokemon blown up bigger with angry eyes. Sorry, Poliwrath. Actually, no, it does have angry eyes and a vibrant pattern on its chest to intimidate opponents and look even more menacing. and we know that it works because it uses the Intimidate ability quite effectively. And these patterns are supposedly different and have accidentally changed over the years, but more impressively, Arbok is still a decent Pokémon despite having no Megas, regional forms, or any substantial updates since the 90s. So not only is it passable in gameplay, but the backwards name did actually change the spelling of the original word, so you can call Arbok a lot of things, but lazy and unthinking is not one of them. But you know what? People love these classic Pokémon so much, we should just do them again. At least that's probably what they were thinking when they made things like Wiglet. The fan term of convergent Pokémon has some people mixed on the execution, but I think the idea could have worked out if it were just the lone example of the Toedscruel line. It would have just been a fun, novel one-off to have these Pokémon be so similar yet unrelated. After all, there have been plenty of similar-looking Pokémon over the years, but nobody complains that Feebas is just a dirty Magikarp, so if this were the only case of it, then I think that people would just laugh it off, because honestly these Pokémon are amazing in a multitude of ways. First of all, if you look at the original Tentacool line, they do actually kind of look like mushrooms already. You wouldn't exactly think it of your own accord, but you can totally see it, because mushrooms come in all kinds of shapes, including the tall rounded ones, and the flatter ones that look like chewed up food. But that's not an insult, that's just a look that Toedscruel pulls off in style. And the names themselves are brilliant, because they sound like the original jellyfish, but also like toadstool, which, if Mario is anything to go by, is a popular term among mushrooms. So everything about these Pokémon is wonderful. From the immense need to see grass and ground again at some point, even down to what once were tentacles becoming legs being super funny to watch them run around at high speeds. So I appreciate the intentionally thought out intricacies of these Pokémon. Well, except for their awful signature ability, and I hope that others can too by looking past just their skin-deep similarities. There are always a few Pokémon that just don't make it over the hurdle to become fully useful, and they would certainly welcome some attention down the road, whether it's an evolution or through some kind of gimmick. One that I haven't quite gotten to the appreciation bar is Qwilfish. It's still a pretty lackluster offering, and the Hisuian form did help out a lot, but the evolution definitely caught my attention. Overqwil kind of is just the bigger version of the previous stage, but it actually works here. The quills grow to an absurd length, some would say that it's overkill, and that's why it has one of the best pun names in all of Pokémon. Even in Gen 8, they were still doing some of their best work. But it's more than just a bloated Qwilfish. This sea creature also resembles a naval mine, which is perfect because you would absolutely want to avoid these poisonous barbs just as much as any explosion. But speaking of poison, when it's paired with Dark, it's one of the best type combinations in the franchise, only being weak to ground. But because Qwilfish used to be a water type before, it still has access to water attacks, so they are sitting pretty with decent counters to their singular weakness. So it's nice to see a Pokemon that needed some help actually get some and it work out for them, because honestly there's an equal chance that it wouldn't have helped in the slightest. Now, one of the most unappreciated Pokemon, at least in my eyes, might just be Oricorio. I don't think anyone dislikes Oricorio, but even with its gimmick, there are some drawbacks that I could see why some people might overlook it. However, this whole idea is so much fun. Obviously, it's based on Darwin's work with the finches in the Galapagos, where they were different based on the islands they lived on. And so they replicated this in the Alola region, giving Oricorio a unique typing depending on which island they were found, starting with electric, then psychic, then fire, and ghost. There's seemingly no specific reason for that order other than the colors of the flowers, which are themselves based on the island names, so I guess that's as deep as it goes. But on top of just the types, these do actually change the physical form of these Pokémon by giving them alternate dance styles. And they're all unique styles that you can clearly tell apart, like flamenco dancing or a style of hula dancing. And I don't exactly know that cheerleading necessarily fits with the other styles, but it's clearly energetic and it could generate a lot of electricity, I suppose, just like how the traditional Spanish dance is filled with a fiery passion. And unlike some Pokémon, you can change their form whenever you want, as long as you have enough of the nectar that you desire. And if that weren't enough, they also get the signature Dancer ability that allows them to mimic any dance moves on the field. And while there aren't too many of those across the game, they're usually pretty powerful whether for attack or for setup. And to top it all off, the name ties it all together. It's not just fun to say, it includes choreo, as in choreography, because that's what this Pokemon lives for. I could see a little why some people wouldn't love Oricorio. This bird doesn't evolve after all, which really is important to some players. And even though it changes types, it doesn't really learn any different coverage moves accordingly. And Revelation Dance, the signature move that changes type to match, isn't even learned until level 40. So Oricorio is a decent Pokemon, but it definitely seems to be made for contests or musicals, or any number of other non-battling Pokemon pastimes. Because this multicolored entertainer is a wonderful concept brought to life in a perfect way, even if it's not built to dominate in combat. And of course, there are so many other Pokemon with magnificent little touches like this that go unappreciated all the time, even if people forget just how great their names and designs actually are. So which underappreciated Pokemon are your favorites? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!